Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, Mysterious Voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I found in my travels. Today, it is Poetry Thursday, so I want to talk about some poetry of interest. And today's poem is all about an analysis of a woman or something like that. This one's going to be a bit of a doozy to understand, but it's always important to talk about poetry, whether or not you understand it, especially if you think that it's good in some sort of way. And so today's poem is Fragment of a Bride by Mary Jo Bang. For those who don't know, Mary Jo Bang is an American poet who has been getting their work published since the mid-1990s. She is kind of a postmodern writer, and based on what I've found of her poetry so far, it doesn't seem to fit the traditional style, which is something I say about many of the poets that I'm talking about, where at least in this case, the poem is more of a prose story than it is a sort of verse poem. And I'll talk more about that in the analysis section. Mary Jo Bang also does some photography, and they've won a number of awards for their work, for the many collections of poetry that they published, and they've also done some translation, which they've seemed to do for Dante's Inferno or something like that, which I think is pretty cool. So very well-versed, well-traveled sort of writer who has many things that they're interested in besides writing, including photography. So without further ado, let's talk about Fragment of a Bride. I will read it and do a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. Fragment of a Bride. Relative to status and state, one often finds the strategic depiction of an implicated myth. Man versus God, fire, female, followed by a beeline drawn to the end of the garden. Outside the concrete sky and a clamor that might be described as a deafening mechanical distraction, the basic of rhythm which has been set in advance to match a harsh song that goes like this: metalwork always outlives fabric. That mess of a crumpled net dress at the bottom of a wardrobe might be a refusal to accept the notion that possibility is something one puts on to go out. A woman, for example, could still wear the dress, but where would she go looking like that? It would be an error to describe her as someone who doesn't know how she is supposed to act, when in actual fact she is acting. Her eyes are open and she is acting like someone looking into a box of scattered catastrophes, saying to the man next to her, "Look at these. Which one would you like?" So that was Fragment of a Bride. In terms of analysis, there's a little bit worth talking about with this poem. In terms of narrative, it's really hard to follow a narrative in this poem. But what seems to be happening is somebody is looking into a box at maybe a garage sale or something like that. And inside that box is scattered catastrophes. And if I had to guess, I would say what's in the box, based on the title of the poem, is a wedding dress. And what I think is happening is either the woman in this poem got divorced, or she was left at the altar, or something unfortunate happened to her husband, and she's having a yard sale, a garage sale of some kind, and there's a person she's talking to, and she's like, "Look at these, which one would you like?" And the poem is sort of analyzing the mindset of a person like that. Now, it's possible that I'm wrong, because I don't quite understand this poem. I would welcome you to, jot down in the comments below, possibly Poetry Crone, as you are a fan of poetry. But jot down, what you think this poem is about based on what you can parse from it. I'll put a link to it in the description just so you can get find it if you're not able to. But yeah, it really seems like the woman in this poem isn't really having a good time. Like it says that mess of a crumpled net dress at the bottom of a wardrobe might be a refusal to accept the notion that possibility is something one puts on to go out. A woman, for example, could still wear that dress, but where could she go looking like that? It would be an error to describe her as someone who doesn't know how she is supposed to act, when in actual fact she is acting. There's a lot there in that verse. Like it's a mess of a crumpled dress, indicating it doesn't look that great. Why hasn't she been looking at her wedding dress, or a similar type of dress? Not that everyone necessarily looks at their wedding dresses on a frequent basis, but you'd at least want to be reminded of those good times. And this person isn't looking at that, like a woman could still wear the dress, but where would she go looking like that? I think that's supposed to be more of a funny statement than anything else. But like, where would she go like wearing that dress? It's entirely too fancy for most situations, and you don't exactly wear a wedding dress when you're just going for a walk or anything like that. And then the where the phrase kind of ends, it says it would be an error to describe her as someone who doesn't know how she is supposed to act, when in actual fact she is acting. Which, besides the sort of consonants there of words that sound alike, which makes the poem flow more smoothly, I think. Like it's wrong to describe her as someone who doesn't know how to behave, because she is acting. She's putting on a show. What's going on with this woman? And again, like if her husband died, or if she's going through a divorce, like she's acting. She's pretending like things might be all right when they aren't. And so women in these situations have to deal with quite a bit. They have to put on a front to make it seem like they're okay when in fact they're not. And to add more, like the end of the poem, it says her eyes are open and she is acting like someone looking into a box of scattered catastrophes, saying to the man next to her, "Look at these, which one would you like?" Some, already there, like she's probably giving away something that meant something to her at one time, but she's looking at a box of scattered catastrophes. Does she want to get rid of this box? Does she have some personal, like, recollection, like personal meaning, personal value associated with the things in these box? I think it's a mixture of everything there. And so this woman is acting. She's dealing with quite a bit. Maybe putting on a front, and like there's a lot going on for her that maybe she can't just say out loud, because she's at a yard sale or something like that, trying to sell all this stuff. But there's inner turmoil, I think, is the essence of this poem. But mostly that's just sort of my guess there, and it could be accurate. That could be exactly what Mary Jo Bang is trying to get at. But I think this poem leaves you with a lot to think about and a lot to sort of pick apart from it, in a way that it could mean any number of things, especially depending on where you are in your own life. You might apply some sort of meaning to it. And again, like, because it's art, it could mean anything, as long as, Mary Jo Bang doesn't come out and say the poem is exactly that. And it is, in general, I found Mary Jo Bang's poems really hard to decipher, because they're all kind of like this. They're not all of them, but many of them are in prose format, and they're very abstract in that they're not really getting directly at what the emotion, but she's going about it a roundabout way, and what the characters are feeling, and the general substance of the poem. Making it sometimes hard to get through, but I still like this poem. I still feel it somewhere within me, like knowing this is pretty solid work right here, which I didn't really think about before as a thing that you could actually experience with poetry, liking it without completely understanding it. But here we are. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on Fragment of a Bride by Mary Jo Bang. A pretty fun poem, very interesting, again, even if I don't completely understand it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Go read it. As I mentioned before, I'll put a link to it in the description. Just let me know what's on your mind, or if you think my review is spot on or completely wrong. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this poem, or this poet if they don't already know. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and bride-related travels. Farewell.